part of you. And if you were lucid, you can actually remove that being and that entire reality. And when you do that, you give more power to yourself here. And so many masters have already basically killed all their selves. Like every realm they've been replicated in, they've removed themselves from those matrices. And now they're in prime. So basically all of themselves are now encapsulated in that one body. They're no longer divided amongst and scattered across multiple realms. So their level of power and ability is at a whole different stage. And that's what we were calling the masters of the waveform. So all of these things, as I said before, are available. And that's why I was saying that, hey, you know, we have this opportunity and this ability to go into higher reaches, but we also have this ability to go into total darkness and ignorance, if you may, but not saying that darkness is the bad one, if you get my drift. And so at the end of the day, I'm just like, I can only do my term here, because that's another thing, is that I was like, in coming into this knowledge, that I'm ready to leave and I'm ready to move on, and that people are stupid and Earth's never going to get it. And, you know, I would even see people as negative because they were always doing negative things to me, or things that I felt were hurting the Earth and the planet. And I took a lot of that personal until I started realizing more about what's actually really happening here. And that the only damage that most people are really doing is to their DNA and to themselves, and they pass it to their kids. And this is, he's the god of writing in the halls of Amenti, or in that corridor. And this is why they're just trying to hide everything, because there is a library down there, and there's a halls of Amenti, and there is a portal there, because the inverted part of the pyramid, right? Because it's like this on top and then like this on the bottom. So that bottom point is 0 point. This would be technically what would be that gap. And that's what I said, the median, or the 0 point area, the gap in the spark plug, is really where you want to be. So the pyramid creates that within the geometry. It actually focuses everything down to that point. And then the Sphinx comes right there, and then the Amenti is there. So from my understanding, the Illuminati, as we know them now, are in that area. They got that, right? They've got control of the spaceport, if you may. And in there is a halls of Amenti. Now, I've heard that the lion, of course, as I showed in that design, was this dog kills. You see what I mean? So they do this a lot. They betray each other. They double cross each other. It's like the way for them. And that's also even when in the male side of the reptilian stuff, that's how they do. They test their mettle in war. So they fight each other. And you see this one in the animal, right? That's why I say it's not, you can observe this in nature. And they will, the way they act. And that's the thing for them. It's kind of like when you watch animals and they're playing so rough and you're like, damn, but for them, it's playing.
Right.
You know what I mean? For you, it's sudden death. And you got to realize kind of like what level you're on versus, you know, where they're kind of at in their mentality. And I think that that's another issue that we have, is we expect everything to think the same way that we do. And that's just not the case. You might as well take your advanced thinking and keep advancing with it. Yeah.
you know, Seven, you talked about reorienting. I hope I'm saying that word right, ourselves, and your show that you did on your channel with the Great Mother, and us looking at up as being down as being up, in as being out, you know, just changing the way we perceive everything that we've been taught.
Yes.
In terms of us reorienting ourselves, should we also, when we analyze humanity and we analyze all these gods that we see in all these biblical books, should we also look at humanity being more godlike than the gods, and the gods being more human than humanity?
How this really is all of it is inside of us. So the thing about these holographic, as they call it, holographic realities, is that it can throw you, because not only they're very paradoxical, but a lot of times there's the same thing taking place in multiple instances. And so in this case, it's more of us. I never found, because all of this theism is going on in the body for sure. Like I can guarantee you that the purest form of this knowledge is happening inside you. So unless, you know, you have great guides, which we did, and we have some even now today, right? it is very difficult to go outside and find the truth. A lot of times you will find everything but the truth trying to go outside yourself. There's literally something that in the initiation, it wants you to figure this out yourself first. And I think this happens because it doesn't want if you're guided, it doesn't want other entities trying to fool you with taking credit for this enlightenment that has been caused, which happens a lot in church. Because if you say anything for 3 hours, you're going to catch the Holy Ghost. And more importantly, hallelujah or something like that, you're going to find that you're going to become possessed with whatever is behind that word, because you're just changing the vibration of your whole field, which takes hours because of how dense a person can be. But you're changing the whole vibratory field to that field. And so it's like knocking on a door consistently, and then eventually something just opens up the door, and then now you're there with it. So in this tense, you know, it's definitely I kind of lost my train of thought there, but I'm basically just saying in a nutshell that we have to realize that this wow, what was the question? Wow, I mean, wow, I guess it is really getting late. Dang, they just I tried to catch it. It was gone like a dream. It was like
I was asking about reorienting ourselves and looking at the gods as being more human and humans being more God.
Basically, thank you. So what I was saying is that never did I find in any of this occult knowledge that it wasn't happening within, and that the highest levels of initiation that you could reach was contacting all of these family members, beings, forces, etc., inside of yourself. And then realizing actually that all of this is really about how the chakras are positioned and also what that chakra specific job is. Because remember, all the chakras got different jobs. The heart is not the spleen is not the kidney is not, but all of them are in agreement, and then they're terminated into the 5. These are known as 5 gods. Even when you get like super third eye open, you look at them and you see faces on the tips of your hands right here. And they have mouths right here where your vortex is. So right where that swirl is, you'll see there's a mouth, there's mouths there, right? Because we command from the 5. This is the hammer. This is the hand. This is what man is. Man means the hand in the ancient culture, right? Because the hand is kind of like, the hand is deep, right? Because it's doing pretty much a lot. It's doing everything, right? There's people who operate without hands, though. But let's just say this is the big part of who we are. But then we got all these other beings, right? The livers, the kidneys, the spleens, ears. All these are entities, right? So when we're looking at the star, we're actually looking at all those millions of different parts and pieces and all that. And some of them are fixed stars. Some of them are big stars. Some of them are suns. And all that is all positioned within the body. And then where you're at is you're like the king of or queen of the universe, right? But your own. So the moment that you go and try to exercise your power over the external realm, you could be thwarted. You could be diminished, because now you literally have to go and compete with the controllers of the external realities. Versus if you go inside, nobody is really impeding you from kicking the front door open of your own consciousness and throwing the whisperer or the jackal or the dweller, or whatever you want to call him today, off your throne, and then seating yourself back into your consciousness, which is, you know, like a dragon master. Like this is like, you know, when Bruce Lee, they were calling the master dragon. You know, you got samurai, and Sam begins with, you know, the samurai, and that's they're warlike, but they have nobility. Right. So this comes from like also that the reptilian clans, if you may, there are many of them that operate in honor. And also you can't confuse, and I talked about this before, but you can't confuse a viper for a python, for a boa constrictor. You see what I mean? These are different kind of snakes. And the main thing that I'm bringing up here is that a lot of times, again, we classify, and that's why spirituality is a classification of all the spirits, to let you see what is the difference between spirits. So there is a classification of them. And in this way, you know, you have certain entities that are way more noble, and they also are practicing knowledge and aesthetic themselves. And then you have complete nightmares, right? And everything in between. So that's also like why a person is generally taken through a process of understanding how they need to be prepared for this. And the only way that you're getting prepared for this introduction to the other aspects of self is generally through inside and an internal initiation, because a lot of times these beings need to be contained within the dream space. Seeing them in physical realities, it's too much for even the physical consciousness to even be able to withstand.
Right.
But in the dream space, if you notice, you even are equipped to do things beyond the nightmares. Sometimes you get in a dream and you just got all these powers and abilities, and it's like you even know how to do this. And you can deal with or absorb or go through an experience with certain life forms or whatever, and then come out unscathed and then have the knowledge. So this is the purpose of these dream worlds, and actually understanding how all this stuff is taking place within. Like, I also see in many ways, like when I'm telling these stories, I do see segments of me in life, this life, right, thinking certain ways, certain people I knew, these kind of things. And then so I asked myself, well, why do you have so many resonances? Like you asked me the other day about Zervan, remember? And I was like, it was funny because it kind of caught me in this weird question. I was like, but at the end of the day, what I start seeing is that every life, it's like you're kind of being presented with the same decisions again. And each life, you're kind of given more power or less, because that's when you go down, you're restricted more. Right. Like you actually like come under dominion more. That's why the poorer you get, the more people can control you, right? Like the richer or the more sovereign you become, the more power you have, right? So this is like that maintenance that, you know, you got to do on yourself to make sure that you're actually climbing the ladder and not electing other gods, or as it's even mentioned in the Bible, wandering after strange gods. This means setting up like all these strange characters that are supposedly your God and your master, when you were already told, hey, all of it is really happening in here. And the only reason why we use outside, like the reason why we use that, is when we're like cross-referencing or checking things that are not easy to discover within, right? Yeah.
So you mentioned you keep talking about us looking outside versus looking inside. I have a question about meditation. When we meditate, we often put up pictures of ancestors, gods, deities, things of that nature. It may be an animal, you know, depending on what culture you were incarnated down here in. How effective would it be, Sevan, if I'm meditating, I'm meditating, and I put up a picture, Sevan, of Brother Rich while I'm meditating? Why? Because this is the avatar that contains everything that I hope to tap into. My ancestors, my mother, my grandmother, my higher self, God, my collective, everything is contained within this avatar. So how effective if I'm looking at myself while I'm meditating as in a picture, Sevan?
I mean, I'm a big fan of self-worship. I actually have gone a little bit more deeper. What I did is I put myself or image of myself into what I call a God box. What a God box is basically where the inside of the box is only mirrors. And then when you basically can see yourself across all dimensions, like you, as far as you can look, you could keep seeing yourself. They call it like an infinity mirror, right?
Yeah.
And also, there's several things that I've created personally that have been able to drive energy back into me. Okay. One of the wow, you on something right here. Okay, I'm gonna give it to you, right? You ready for it?
Yes, sir. Sir.
What I noticed was, and we have this feature inside of Dream Engine where you can put the face of yourself on another character. You may seen, like, you generate the body, then you put your face on it, right?
Right.
You've seen some of my pictures like that. I found that was like a whole different level. Because, and I realized how it was happening, because you know me, I got to break it down. But what happens is when people see you, they see you in a certain light.
Yeah.
Okay. Even when you see yourself in the mirror, you see yourself in a certain light.
Yeah.
And when you change up your appearance or your regalia, you feel that way. It's like you dressing up in, you know, whatever you call it, like you're down, you know, the tuxedos or whatever it is, the dashiki or whatever, where you know, okay, it's prom night, basically. Yeah. And then you kind of see yourself in that light, right? So imagine having all these images that was you depicted in this higher light. What I believe happens is not only when people see those images, they start projecting, I can prove this is real. They start projecting like, oh, that's him. And they lose that idea of the lowly version of you that they're so familiar with. And they install this new projection in their mind. So every time they see you as that and not as like this normal person, right?
Right.
Another thing that I wanted to mention earlier, and I was going to forget, but like, for instance, this is one of the devices that I created. It's called the Cosmic Watch, right?
Oh, that looks powerful. What's that?
So in this device, first of all, it has the manumission, right? So in language, what you'll notice is that on all the risks of all of the sky gods and the gods of the deep, they always have something that looks like a watch. And if you look real closely, this symbol is on the watch because this is the solar symbol. And then the solar symbol is then paired with, and down the side is written in Sumerian, the first time being free was ever written, which is called the Amagi. And the Amagi in Sumerian means, one second. I see there's a window just popped up out of nowhere. So the Amagi in Sumerian means literally to go back within your mother. You can Google it on Wikipedia. And what this means is that the only time, because they basically found out that the reason why many beings were being held on the planet was because they were in debt. Most of them were in debt to spirits, because remember that started happening. And so the manumission was created because they knew that the only time you can truly be free of debt was to go back into your mother's womb, because there was no debt there. Okay. And then also underneath this is metamaterial. So I started finding out that these languages do break down into shapes. We call them cymatics. But even deeper than that, certain cymatics exude properties. That's what metamaterial is. It's like something that has a property that is very strange. Meta always means almost at the border of even being explained. And in this case, we found a shape that was a perfect harmonic. And I always speak in the collective, even though this would be me going in. But I found a shape that basically matched the perfect harmonic. And the reason is I know because metals that generally tarnish fast, like copper, don't tarnish at all with this pattern. And it was something I discovered over time. It was like coming back to a drawer of all these cymatics and then noticing that one wasn't rusted. Then back engineering exactly what the design was and figuring out that it's sitting right in the middle of the harmonic, like perfectly tuned, and then like completely going in and creating something that can keep reverberating that. And that's when this was actually created. So this, and it's also this bezel around it is, this one is wanga wood, but it's generally milled in red heart wood, right? So these are very these woods resonate. And then, of course, this is this is magnetic, right? So it straps on there. And then there's a North Pole side here. So everything that is coming through the energy of this is going right into the body. Okay? So what I'm talking about is just to allow that to be a part of the question here is that we're talking about resonances, right? Because you say, hey, if I put this of myself, all of that is based on resonances, and the more powerful resonances, which words used to be powerful resonances, but the more powerful resonances that you have, the more it adds energy to your energetic field. And that always has to come with the disclaimer of grounding, right? Because ground is amplification. And then lastly, like you see this is the vector equilibrium. This was the last of the design of these go together, basically. Or they could be separate. But this right here was seeing in the reality that you constantly get these imbalances in any space that you go into. I felt like that we needed like a shield, you know what I mean, when you're going into certain places. And so this design was designed to do that. So what this is called the cuboctahedron. And first, on the top of it, it contains a metamaterial pattern which charges what's inside. This material is also doped. It's basically a doped material, and this means that it's actually conductive, right? And then inside actually lies the resonator. So each box is set in an array. So it has a serial number here that basically allows us to understand where this unit actually is in the array. And then the main component is this inside. And what this is the magnetic field is perfectly balanced. And it also contains precious metals, if you may. There's titanium, and this was titanium, cobalt. There's iron, zinc, copper, and bismuth, which is it's a non-attractive magnet, right? And this device is basically just held in the hand. And you'll notice that, like, when you're doing anything, that you start feeling like a web. You'll notice that when you start building up your energy field, the first feeling is like a web. It almost feels like a web on your face. And what that is that same field I showed with the torus, it pushes out from your body. It's actually supposed to extend quite far from your body when your Merkaba, quote unquote, is completely activated. But in this case, this harmonizes and stimulates the field. So it's more of like something that when you're thinking or when you're talking, you know, you use this to basically maintain the field that's around you, right? So this is what I call spiritual technologies, right? And no telling what kind of flack I would get if, you know, I start, because they're like, oh my goodness, Sevan's already, you know. But at the end of the day, like, what I will do is I will basically take all of the knowledge, because for me, I started getting to this point, especially after like my 8th year. And I was like getting all this knowledge that was about like the beyond. And I started asking myself how much of this knowledge I was able to apply in the physical reality. And I told myself that I needed to start basically making my consciousness, higher self or whatever, give me knowledge about things that were going to assist me in this reality. Because it seemed like it always loved to go into like the other planets and stuff. And don't get me wrong, I love the knowledge and everything, but I will often find when I will wake up that there would be nothing that I could actually come into the reality and help myself with specifically. And when I asked about that, I was told because that's how I was focusing my energy. So I started focusing my energy on getting knowledge about higher things that could be applied in the reality right now. And this is what came to me, but I had to build it. And because in the first phase, I was like trying to get people to understand what I was trying to build, like engineers and CAD guys and stuff. And all I was doing was ending up with a bill and not what I wanted. So then I started, of course, in the process of training myself. That's why you always see some machine around me or 3D printer or mill or something like that, because I'm fabricating constantly. Like I'm always making and creating, shaping and forming and fashioning different things to see what is the potential of the energetic fields, because I know the reality contains what I call power gloves. These are quirks in the reality. Like we had one before where I had this house and in the room, there was a dome in the room was domed. And it turned out that underneath this room, they were going to make a wine cellar, but they decided not to. But the area was still hollow and you never knew it because they put a floor over it. But somehow when you got in a certain point of this room and you talked, you couldn't hear your voice, but the person in the room could. And it was like you were talking in their head. This is known to happen. It's like an acoustic thing, and it happens at a sweet spot in the curve. And so those kind of things and many more piqued my interest to realize that, hey, these folks be running around here acting like they discovered everything already, but really they haven't. After all, they're pretty ignorant. So if you crack into the knowledge, don't think that you're not going to potentially discover something that nobody has ever found out, because they're constantly hiding any of this stuff, right? So it's just that awareness that, once again, that, you know, we're not only able to create, but like I said, I also have even been able to create these things and bring them out to humanity. And these are the things that we're going to be giving away. In fact, we're going to be giving away two cuboctahedrons, 2 watches. And then I'm also going to be giving the generative AI course away that I did, because it would teach a person how to do everything with making the images, how to even do the video thing. You know, I want to link up with you too, because we talked before about, you know, at least sponsoring some of this stuff and putting it on the channel. But I just need to know, of course, what resonates right with you. And, you know, I just want to, just spread the knowledge more and spread these gifts more. And this stuff happens for me because I also remember I'm literally in the jungle. So I have no real distraction like that. So I have a lot of time to really I could tell you that somebody would spend probably at least 10 years trying to make this. Like at one point, we was always when we were again, I speak in a collective, when we was engineering this, I often thought man, you know, somebody could take my design, right? And it's so hard to crank one of these out. I thought that I'd be flattered if somebody did, because even the moment they got to the bezel, they'd be like, oh man, we ripped it up, broke it up. You know, so anyway, I just was, like I said, it's a lot of things that you can create when you have the time to, right?
Yeah,
so,
definitely. Oh man, well, last question, Sevan. Like I said, we definitely got to do a part 2. We going on 5 hours, brother.
Small things to a giant.
We go to a 5 hour. Listen, all right, last question, brother. If we're analyzing this thing we call life in terms of a video game, and you know, I'm gonna reference Mike Tyson's Punch Out since I'm an 80s baby. You know, you got the first fighter, second fighter, third fighter. The last fighter was Mike Tyson.
Glass Joe first.
Glass Joe was the first fighter. Joe was the first fighter. Last fighter was Mike Tyson. Real hard to beat for a lot of people. A lot of people to this day never beat Mike Tyson.
Yeah, they never got past Ball Bull.
Yeah.
The second Ball Bull.
If we're looking at, you know, let's say the Great Mother, and this is her video game that she's playing, not just Earth, but the whole universe. It's a video game that's being played by the Great Mother, and there's different levels. Would you say Earth is the last character, the Mike Tyson? Is it the most difficult level in the video game because it's the most dense, the most advanced souls make it here, because it's the most, I mean, this shit, you come here, you got amnesia, you might have a mother that's a crackhead, then you might get tortured, then you might go through trauma, then after that your baby mama cheat on you, then after that your kids are bad, anything can happen. That's the point. Infinite possibilities, anything can happen. You lose your memory, you forget who you are, simultaneously you're being brainwashed. Is this the most difficult level in the whole universe for any soul to play? I mean, and after this, you done beat the game. There's nowhere else to go, Sevan. Jupiter, Saturn, nothing is as difficult as Earth. Would you say it's like that, my brother?
My take on this is first of all, the Great Mother doesn't like games. This is kind of like when you go into your grandmother's house and she's just so strict, and it's like everything is in order. My experience has been with the Great Mother exactly like that. The Jackal loves games, though. He's literally a jester. He's a joker. And in that way, in his trickster-like behavior, he has created many of these. It's like a smile now, cry later kind of scenario where it seems like a dramatic comedy. That's kind of like what it is, like a divine comedy. Right. But people really get hurt, right? Yeah. And it's a sadistic laughing, like a Joker, you know how they show Joker on the movie where he's smiling, but it's really because of all the pain. And it's almost like they show people when they get crazy, like they had just one really dark movie. I just, you see the trailer and you just know what they on, and it was called Smile or something like that. And it was showing this weird grimace, which is the term, occult term is grimace. It's a part of the Reaper. So there's other forms here, and they're not as nice. And when they appear with a very sinister type of smile, and it's all darkness, right? So it's all craziness. I'll just say it like that. So in that way, it's kind of like a person that becomes a lunatic. Like you start being in something so long, because at the end of the day, this could drive a person psycho, because it's a cycle, right? So they're consistently repeating the cycle over and over again. If they can't figure out what's going on, it starts to drive them crazy. And then they start to kind of get binded to it, right? And so from my experience, the game-like nature to this reality that's so much of a joke right now is a product of the Jackal. Versus in the Great Mother's reality, it is more of what you're explaining, where there's things to learn. Right. So what this is what they call the lamb on the path. It's like you kind of left the path and now you're kind of in Wonderland. But when you return back to the path and you continue your journey. And this journey, it consists of like walking through the halls of your ancestors and absorbing all the wisdom and the knowledge that they have. So in Earth is still one of the ancestors, or even the jackal is one of the ancestors. This is another thing that people need to understand. In the lines in these lineages, it's not like they're going to go and kill the jackal. This would be very similar to walking into somebody else's family and saying, kill the father because he did X. You don't even have the rank to do that. Like, so it's like a highborn being killed by a lowborn is not really even approved in that way, right? In the whole scheme of things with the royal families and holy families and this kind of thing, right? So this could perpetuate for quite a bit externally. Internally, you have really a lot of power unless you fall out of power. And that's what we were saying about the hereditary passing of where somebody can kind of like doom you a little bit, like your mom can doom you a little bit, and you have to kind of swim. That's why we have a saying around here, keep swimming. And what we're talking about is getting to the surface. Because a lot of times people are looking to even get to zero again, because where they're at is like negative 30 in the degrees, right? They're base, lo-fi, right? So they're really low in their frequency. And, you know, and versus not saying low frequency is a bad thing. There's a lesson there. Sub infrared is the realm. You could see them if you stop using, if you weren't exposed to light for 2 weeks, you can see the other entities. They live in the sub-red realm, what they call it? Infrared, right? They're infrared, literally, that's actually what you see them. They move around like red shadows. You see what I mean? And if the more you exposed to light, because your pineal gland closes when you're exposed to light. And that's why you should understand kind of like the whole role of light in a reality is actually to blind you. That's why they call it blinded by the light.
Right.
And so when you're also remember the sun, remember I said it's still more like the great mother's principle, because it's like those are the machinations that are dynamos. But this is not the same sun. This is the sixth sun, right? So the sixth sun, in this case, all these suns roll through like processors in the morning. This is why that the kid be doing stuff that they're doing. And so nothing is really out of place here. So why we would want to blame other races, we would want to blame other circumstances. This is still all about that one thing that the celestials, if you may, so we don't give them terms like mothers and fathers, told Jehovah Genetrix about, which is, hey, don't create unbalance, because you're gonna we've been through this before. Look how much stuff has happened now. We're in the after effect of this. And if you don't think that that's the truth, you can definitely say that kid that ends up lighting somebody up with a rifle or whatever is a product of generally a man or a boy that does not have a mother or does not have a father or does not have a family. And so all we're really doing here, and I'm still looking for this bas relief, by the way, that's what I'm looking for. And so all we're really doing here is we're restoring the family, but the family has got beef, right? The family is always arguing. The number one question that's always asked to me is that my mother or somebody close to me in my family is not listening to this knowledge, and I'm tired of dealing with them. What should I do? And I'm pretty sure that's probably a question you get a lot. So you can see it's inherent and resident inside of us to constantly being conflicting with our families all the time, right? And that lets you understand the condition of the spirituality. And because of that condition, you have now a predator, something that is preying on this vulnerability, preying on this weakness. Because see, the family structure, like, you know, the women get tired because they don't have the grandmothers there. The kids don't get educated because they don't have the whole village. So you got, you know, to raise a child, it takes a whole village, right? So because when you don't have that, shit's going to happen because you don't have that. Don't think that just because you don't have that, everything is going to be okay. Now you're going to end up going through this whole process. And so all of the bad things, quote unquote, that we're seeing happening is based on the ignorance of us actually bringing children into the world, that even it got to a point where people were selling their own children. They were bartering their children with spirits. You can have the child, 2 childs in the generation if you give me riches this life. So they were doing all types of horrid things with their fruits. Because remember, for us as trees, we only can produce fruit, and the fruit from us is our children. And so if anything is going to be eating us, it's going to be eating our fruit, or it's going to be eating our children. So the Gnostics also believe that you shouldn't keep having babies and bringing babies into the world, because what you're doing is you're bringing babies for the jackal to eat. Because if you don't raise them properly, then they get caught up in the jackal system. So they extract all the magnesium off for all of the stuff that you're using magnesium for, generally from the water, not from the earth. There's way more than enough there. It has all of the cell salts, all of the, it's got a full stack of all the salts. So as you go out there and you soak, you connect. If you go back if the tide pulls all the way back, which is called low tide, and you go out in there, where you're going is now where they can actually communicate, meaning that ancestors and everything, that's where they stop. They don't get beached, meaning that no aquatic being with the right sense goes any further than where the tide pulls back completely. So right there is the line. And then that zone, and I've talked about this before, between the low tide and the high tide, that is called the gray area. This is the same thing that they're exploiting in the reality. There's always a gray area where there's like a margin zone where it's kind of like anything goes in between the shore and, where the first entry of that is, right? So yeah, hopefully that, you'll be able to take this knowledge and this wisdom and let it turn infinite wheels. Because for me, like, I can roll through all of this and for infinitely, because I have infinite wheels, because my knowledge it doesn't have any gaps in it. So there's nothing that I'm still trying to technically figure out. And because of that, I'm able to go deeper. But every time I go deeper, I do learn something new and I do figure something out. And that's why I realized that what we had done is we basically use knowledge as like a fuel supply. And that's what I was saying. And maybe you mentioned it before. See, the technology, of course, is plagiarized from spirituality. But if spirituality is really has to do with the stars, then technically all we were really doing before there was TV or any of this or light pollution was we were just interfacing with the stars. And you go and find out that most of it was still a lot of the you don't know really what the matriarch was doing, because they buried and destroyed a lot of their knowledge, or it was never written, because they're the original Kabbalah. They didn't never say the words. Everything was in tone, right? So basically it's just like you can see how society has been rolling. And then you can see how, like I said, that there is a direction that you shouldn't go, if you may. And then now what has come to you is more knowledge and wisdom that gives you more insight on the things that you're actually seeing around you. Yeah. So I guess, I never found the glyph here. So, I can desist. But as you can see with me, it's not really about an end. It's just about getting everybody to a point of clarity. I also did want to mention, though, that we're going to be giving out some stuff, right? Because the plan is right now, because by lack of wisdom, my people perish. And you got to admit that still there's a lot of people that don't deal with this kind of knowledge at all. Even the stuff that we may find commonplace, they're already I don't know about this. So this means that it's better to teach people based on what they want to know and then kind of have them start going up the ladder. And that's why I find that if long as they can get the truth, this could be potentially a game changer. If we can rally all the Indians, there's a lot of them. Don't let me get some of the Black Chinese. You know what I mean? I'm just saying, if it gets to the people, the knowledge in their language, because remember that whole thing, let us go down and confuse them. I explained that in the last episode, was them confusing the language. And this is why it's important to go in the last episode, because I broke down more of Jackal's workings. But the confusion of language is what has got us all separate, because if I go up into another country and I'm trying to explain this and I can't speak their language, I'm dust. Now, also, because I'm talking about high occult matters, unless I know the right words to translate what I'm saying to in their language, now they're really lost. Some folks are still barely hanging on right now. Imagine if I'm trying to speak this in Mandarin, I'm trying to find a word for Marduk in Mandarin or some kind of cognate. I'm not going to be able to find it. So what we've done is that we've deployed the system in order to be able to bring more people into the awareness of spiritual knowledge. And that's why I said before, if I had everybody with me, then it would actually make a huge impact. And then so what I got to do at times though is see, okay, how is that going to be something that everybody wants to participate in? And so, because, you know, there tends to have to be some kind of playing like, you know, that's Lex Friedman basically that put them onto it. And they're re-engineering their characters. Like they re-engineer themselves from a nerd like Bezos. Now they, you know, they will choke you out on the mat. You see what I mean? And it's just like when you can get like Elon and Zuckerberg and a few others, maybe Sam Altman and a few others, Samuel Altman, altering men. If you get them into all one room with each other, they're pretty much controlling the entire reality and your children alike. You see what I mean? And do you think that it's going to be one man speaking one language in a guttural tone and doesn't even know the mysteries that is going to be able to release all of the souls that are consistently being they take the souls from the mother, just like there's fishing ocean out of the sea, fishing fish out of the sea, fishing, taking stuff off the trees, drilling stuff out of the ground. So that's all of the mother right there, right? Like I talked about earlier. So what do they do with that? They take and they exploit it. And we don't have like, who do you have? Tell me who I can call that I can say, look, I got a valuation right now, 26 million. I'll give you 10% for 5 million on this so I can scale it. I wouldn't be able to call one person that I know or that is anywhere near this to be able to do anything. You see what I mean? And so that tells you it all right there. and so I'm just that one in this. As I said before, 10, 22, 78. That's your entire, that's 10 on the major arcana, the minor arcana, and the whole deck. That's JEB, which is Jachin, Eva, Boaz, the third. I've been 3 times around the arc. You see what I mean? My mother is Rahima. Her father is Joseph Henry Lyons. The queen's father is Joseph Henry Lyons. So what's going on here? Am I to then perceive that the entire matrix is simply designed around making puns and jokes of me because my names and numbers are surrounded by all of the occult principles of the reality? Or would you find that same thing to be true with you if you really understood how to dissect and then put back together your life? And even if you did, would that empower you? Or would that hurt you? Would that harm you? Would it give you like a megalomania? And then you would start using that kind of power and energy to try to elevate yourself beyond others? Or would that encourage you to bring strength and to show strength in the face of a beast? You see what I mean? So these are the tests and the trials that are being put to men. And I'm glad that at this stage we have mothers. And, you know, obviously with your platform, which has a lot of reach also, that more beings are hearing at least what I'm saying. You don't got to agree. You don't got to disagree. But at the end of the day, you got to still stack me up against every single person that you also know or know about, even your Kanye's and this. And then you got to say, who is really, really doing the dynamics of actually bringing in more levels of awareness and awakening for our species and trying to position us in a way where we don't keep getting disrespected and having to degrade and debase ourselves in order to be able to make it. And that every time something new comes out, that we actually are the ones that created it. I know people that have brilliant ideas, but they don't have funding. I'm one of them, right? I fund my own projects and then I build them and I keep it going. You see me? I'm 16 hours a day for 15 years to pull this load to get this going on, right? There are those that are with me, but I also believe that many are still on the fence. It's like a luxury. It's like an entertainment. But meanwhile, your kids, because that's who this is for. I seldom build for adults anymore because reality is that they're almost like kids. So if you don't build it for kids, then you're definitely not going to get the adults either. Right. And so what I've been doing is I've been really thinking about this future. And that's why I built this. Eventually, I'll probably put this on the blockchain as an origin. And that way, ordinal. And that way, no matter what happens, as long as the technology thing is still in play, or Bitcoin and the blockchain is still in play, people will always be able to access high levels of spiritual knowledge because it's going to be like the Pirate Bay. you see, they ain't got rid of the Pirate Bay yet. Why? Because it's working with a specific kind of node-based technology where it's on little pieces on everybody's computer. So there's no way to delete it unless you're going to delete everybody's computer. That's how our knowledge should be, because the world's not going to be over in 10 years, and it's not going to necessarily look like Jesus times in 10 years either. We got a bit to go in the transformation. So we at least need the halls of amenti, the actual annuals of humanity still available for those who want to enter in and know thesis or know more about themselves. That's all we've done here. So I invite you to join in on Sunday. It all launches because there's going to be some quests. We're going to ask people to do some key things, like just basically do some likes and stuff like that and share a little bit of information. And then for that, we're going to give you experience points. Whoever finishes the top 4 with the most experience points is going to get these gifts. What is that going to allow us to do? The things that we've placed in these actionables, which we'll unveil on Sunday, it will drive this platform to the top of not only the search engines, but also to the top of the tech space, where we now can actually start getting some traction in this field. And then now we can actually begin to really build some stuff out because we have the resources and we have what is necessary to do that with. And you're going to see the same thing. I'm going to be the same person that I am right now, still driving, still creating, and still giving opportunities, right? So that's what it is. So I hope that, everything that was presented today makes perfect sense. Maybe I could drop a link in the chat just in case those who don't see this will know where to get it at. But if you don't, you can jump into Sybil's AI with an S. So that's SIBYLS .ai. And you could check it out. Also, there's a free trial here.